There we go. All right, I'm going to start that little wrap over again.
Good evening, everybody.
Cool. My name is Jeffrey LaFrancois. I'm the co-chair of this community board for Waterfront Parks and Environment Committee, joined by my fellow co-chair, Marty DeCat, as well as a number of members of our committee and those that are presenting on our agenda tonight. As is our standard process, we'll be taking items of business as they are listed on our agenda. We will hear from the applicant. We'll then have questions from the committee. We will then go to members of the public for questions, and then we'll come back to the committee for any comments, discussion, and potentially a letter on any given topic. We have 3 items listed on our agenda this evening, and I also want to note that there's probably something that's going to come up in the new business section. Just want to flag that in advance for the committee. I think we should prepare to have a short discussion on shore power, given the recent return of cruise ships to the city of New York, and this committee's interest on making that a greener industry. And so just want to flag that for now. Anything else in terms of new business anybody plans to raise that we can be aware of now? Noreen?
I was hoping to give a brief update on Chelsea Waterside Park construction.
Oh, we love those. So sorry, I saw you nodding, but absolutely that one as well. I noted that. So we would love to hear that. So let's start the meeting with formally item 1 with Hudson River Park presenting on a potential new Chelsea Piers lease.
Thank you. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Noreen Doyle, and I am the relatively new president of Hudson River Park Trust. And we wanted to come, I see Brad's hand is up.
Brad, did you have a question before we dive in? Brad?
Yeah, you asked for about new business.
Yes.
It kind of relates to the power question. I had sent the board some info about the company on the East River that's producing
that's doing the turbine work.
And also they had proposed quite a few things for the Hudson River that they have that could work there. So I would like possibly to add that to the agenda when you get to it. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Sure. Thanks, Brad.
Okay.
Go ahead, Noreen. Sorry about that.
No problem. So we, I think, have been mentioning that we were negotiating with Chelsea Piers for a new lease for a couple of months now. And we are getting close to the finish line, which means that we are getting close to formally being in a position to start our what's called the significant action process. Under the statute that governs Hudson River Park, whenever there is significant business, a significant action, which this lease would be, we are obligated to go through a public review and comment period and hold a public hearing. In addition, for those of you who've been working with us for a long time now, we always try to come to the community board in a more informal way to give you an update on the process and really, frankly, to be able to do more of a Q&A and have a more interactive format than the public hearing and public comment period allows. So tonight we are here really with kind of a preview of where we are with respect to the Chelsea Piers lease, really why we are here, and to give you a sense of the basic types of benefits from the park side that we perceive here, and to give you a chance to meet the Chelsea Piers leadership, some of them, and to hear, why we are doing this from them directly. So we have a few people here from the trust and from Chelsea Piers. I would ask that you give us a chance to get through the full presentation before doing the Q&A part of it, because I think it'll make sense that way.
Absolutely.
The actual visual presentation is relatively brief. So Janine, if I could ask after Chelsea Piers finishes, when it transitions to Dan, I think it's probably easier for us all if we remove the slides so that we can just talk to each other a little more intimately. And I think that's it as my starting place. So really right now we are still trying on a staff level and with our board to finalize the lease negotiations with Chelsea Piers. We have not yet gotten to the pencils down stage. We think that will be soon, and that we will be back to you again, probably in October and probably in November, talking to you about this in some more detail. And tonight is really to get you oriented and to answer any initial questions that we may have. So David Tewksbury, I think you may be the first speaker. Is that right?
That is correct, Noreen. Should I take it away? Thank you. My name is David Tewksbury. I'm one of the principals of Chelsea Piers Management, and I have been for the past 30 plus years. I am here on this Zoom call this evening with three of my associates. One is my partner, Tom Bernstein, who is the president of Chelsea Piers Management, and with our third partner who's not here, Roland Betts. We are the three people who conceived the project in the early 90s, secured the lease from New York State, worked with the trust to develop a use profile, built the piers, and we have managed operations for the last 25 years. We're joined by two of our associates, Erica Bates, who has been our community liaison for the past, nearly 20 years. She probably knows most of you and has been very active in the community up and down the West Side. And my associate, Katie Cooper, who's the vice president at Chelsea Piers and has been actively engaged in working on this project with HRPT over the past year and a half. So first, I'd like to give you a little history. If you could move the slide forward. A little background on Chelsea Piers. We've been here 25 years. We think, and I think many people agree, we're a unique and successful public-private partnership. This is state-owned land, private capital, and entrepreneurship created a very wonderful and popular public destination for many New Yorkers. And I think, we like to say we believe we've changed the way many people raise their families in New York City. And people who have told us they would have left the city for the suburbs had there not been a recreational outlet for their children, we've heard many, many times over the past couple of decades. We think we play a very important role in providing high quality sports, recreation, and entertainment for New York City residents. We are not a tourist destination, but rather a place where New Yorkers, young and old, engage in healthy and life-enhancing activities. Our typical customer, member, or visitor comes, not once a month or once a quarter or once a year, but many of our visitors and guests come 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week. They're in the adult league, child's on a gymnastics team, they play in a hockey program. So we're a go-to place for sports and recreation for families in New York. We're also, as you can see from these images, on the left, by the way, is what the piers looked like in 1994, right after we started construction and had taken the roofs off of the pier sheds 60 and 61. And on the right-hand side, that was still occupied by the Department of Parks. And on the right is what it looks like today or recently. I don't see Hudson Yards in the picture, but we realize the importance of our physical location. We occupy 5 city blocks along the Hudson River waterfront, and we have understood from the start that we're a very important asset to the Hudson River Park and the local communities. We have a 1-mile walkway around the perimeter. We have access through the piers, and for anybody who comes our way to visit, we try to keep things in very good condition, clean, safe, friendly, and fun, which happens to be our mission statement. We're delighted to be an important amenity to the park, and we pay a significant amount of rent to the Hudson River Park Trust. So we find ourselves, I think we're the largest financial supporter in the park in terms of what we pay annually in rent and pilot obligations. We're very committed to what we do. We're engaged with our community, or we think we have many communities, many different people come to Chelsea Piers for different reasons and form communities of their own, whether they're triathletes or youth hockey families or joggers who run around the perimeter of the piers. You know, there are many communities that are served by us. We're here today because we've been working with the trust because we are very committed to perpetuating Chelsea Piers for future generations. You know, as Tom often says, you know, without Chelsea Piers, if you took it away, there would be a gaping hole for sports and recreation and families in New York City. Could move the slide forward one, please. This is as a reminder of what we do. We build, own, and operate some of the largest and active sports and recreation facilities in New York. Actually, some of the busiest sports and recreation facilities in North America. We have 4 principal venues that we directly operate, and that's our field house, which has a world-class gymnastics facility, indoor soccer, basketball, batting cages, preschool, and dance facilities. We run Sky Rink, which was the genesis of the original Chelsea Piers. It used to be on 33rd and 10th Avenue, and we're seeking a new home for a single ice rink, and we stumbled across Pier 61 in 1991, and things got out of hand from there. But Sky Rink is the busiest twin rink ice skating facility in North America. There's people on the ice from 5 a.m. to 1 a.m., virtually 365 days a year. We run a adult membership health club on Pier 60 called Chelsea Piers Fitness. It is the largest fitness club in New York City. It's approximately 3 acres of interior space, and it has everything from a quarter-mile jogging track, workout equipment, pool, sun decks. It's a beautiful facility. If you aren't a member, I'd encourage you all to make a visit and hopefully join. And then on Pier 59, we run our golf club and golf driving range, which is a 4-tiered hitting stall. We got 52 stalls. We have literally billions of balls since we opened the business 25 years ago. We run one of the largest teaching and academy programs in the country. We have a beautiful, which we actually finished at the beginning of COVID, great timing, a beautiful new waterfront bar and restaurant as part of the club. And it's a bustling facility. It's actually was our first facility to reopen during COVID in June of last year. And because it's doors and there was nothing else for New Yorkers to do, it's our one business that has done quite well since we reopened in June 2020. Next slide, please. We also have a series of tenants and or related businesses at the piers. And the first one is Bowlmore, which is a 40-lane bowling alley located between Pier 59 and 60. It also is one of the busiest bowling centers in North America. We have a joint venture with the Abigail Kirsch family, and we run 3 banquet facilities, one on the tip of Pier 60, that's our largest, and it's called Pier 60. We have a second on Pier 59, Pier 61, and a third, which is called Current, is located on Pier 59. We host approximately, pre-COVID, about 750 events a year between these 3 banquet facilities. We are also the home of Silver Screen Studios. We own and operate this, it's non-sports. But we have been the home base for the Law and Order empire, and that's for the last 25 years. We had the original Law and Order show, then Criminal Intent joined us, and when Law and Order ultimately went off the air about 10 years ago, the first show, Special Victims Unit came in and took over the space. So these are all NBC Universal productions, and probably one of the most successful TV enterprises ever. We run a marina, which includes a small boat marina for about 60 vessels, and then laying up around the piers, everything from luxurious private yachts to dinner cruise and harbor cruise boats. And we have one last tenant, Pier 59 Studios, which is located up on the second level above the golf facility, and the largest fashion photography studio in North America. You know, there's a lot going on. We balance the needs of the site in terms of making sure people can safely get in and out of there. And it's a really vibrant place. There's always usually something going on. We collectively with some of our tenants employ over 2,000 people at Chelsea Piers, and we're a very, very important economic engine for not just the Hudson River Park, but the city of New York. If you could move to the next slide, please. We've worked hard over the past 20 years to be engaged with the community and to support people in need. We've worked with many local and not-for-profit organizations to support kids, the arts, the Hudson River Park, and the environment. This is just a sampling of some. We have established and been the principal funder of scholarship programs for kids. We support two scholarship programs, the Chelsea Piers Youth Scholarship Program and the Skyrink Youth Scholarship Program. All told, we've awarded over $5 million in financial support to kids, over 10,000 separate awards. So it's very important to us that we sustain that mission, and it's been very successful thus far. We've hosted, we do a lot. We try to get back. We've hosted hundreds of free fitness classes in the park. We've been very active in this over the past few years. As I mentioned before, we work hard to maintain our 5 city blocks of waterfront in pristine condition. So it's a place that people want to go to. And we've worked hard to have an ongoing dialogue with Community Board 4, the Hudson River Park Advisory Council, and the Trust, and other local community and not-for-profit groups of all shapes and sizes. We're very, very committed. So, final point, we are seeking an extension to our lease term. It's in the form of a new lease. And we're really focused on getting this done because Chelsea Piers is a vital resource for New York and New York City residents. We are required, because of the nature of this property, to continue to invest significant capital into maintaining the piers, the pilings, the roofs, even the spaces themselves. These are 100-year-old pier buildings that, it's not like moving into a brand newly constructed piece of real estate. The annual investment is very, very significant. Our tenants need similar lease security in order to continue to maintain their business operations and facilities in peak conditions. And, I guess the unique thing about what we do at Chelsea Piers and our tenants too, we need to be there. There's, you can't relocate ice rinks or golf driving ranges or dinner cruise operations or field houses. The spaces just do not exist anywhere else on the island of Manhattan. So we have a very unique physical resource that we have principally programmed for sports and recreation facilities. And if the city and the trust want to maintain those for decades to come, that's why we're in these discussions for a new extended lease term. COVID has amplified the need for a longer term lease security. We needed to refinance last year in order to have adequate capital to fulfill our obligations to the trust and to ride out the storm of COVID. And that's put us in a position where we need lease term to repay that. And, it's generally our belief that a longer lease term for Chelsea Piers is a win-win for all parties, for the city, for the local communities, for all of the people who use Chelsea Piers. So we're very excited to have be engaged in this discussion and at the final stages of the lease negotiation. And we look forward to your questions. My partner, Tom, I don't know if you have any comments with the group.
David, you've covered a lot of ground and said it very well. I'll just say that for all of us who work here, and we, in terms of the senior management here, we've had very little turnover. So we have tens, if not hundreds of people who have worked with us for the better part of 25 years. And I think that's really what we're proudest of. You know, David mentioned very quickly sort of our culture, and that we boiled it down a little mission statement that almost seems silly, but it's really the spirit that drives the Chelsea Piers and has sustained us for 25 years. And it's clean, safe, friendly, and fun. And, you know, when we look back, one, the time has flown by. Two, we've all watched, you know, front row and center, the building of the park. The park's a miracle. The park is a truly extraordinary thing. It's transformed New York. It's when you look historically, you can only think of Central Park in terms of Manhattan having the transformative impact of the Hudson River Park. So this has really been, for us in our journey here, a labor of love, as well as creating a new enterprise. And the other thing I'll say is, you know, so much has happened in the last 25 years. The adversity we've seen from 9/11 to the financial meltdown of 2009 to Superstorm Sandy, and now COVID. And we've withstood it all. And what we've been proudest of is in these moments of terrible adversity, real huge challenges. The team of people who go to work here every day and love the place, they always rise to the occasion. They always sort of do more than could ever be expected. And that sort of sustains the spirit of the Chelsea Piers. So we look at the future here as we look at this really as a legacy and as sustaining this for next generations of New York. And you know, as I said, we great pride. We're part of the fabric of the city. We're part of the fabric of the park, and we smile when we come here every day to go to work.
Thank you.
Maureen, I think. Turning
Yeah.
it back to you, Jeffrey.
Yeah, so thank you, Tom and David, and obviously Chelsea Piers. I'm sure we'll be happy to answer any questions about, you know, what they do there at the site. I'm going to turn this over to Dan Kurtz. Dan, many of you know, but you now know him in a new capacity. Dan is no longer our CFO. He left the park, left us full time, but he agreed to help us to the finish line with respect to Chelsea Piers, and I'm very grateful to that. So Dan is going to give you an overview of kind of the public side of this for your perspective.
Bronchitis, so I may switch to mute if I start coughing. So,
Yeah.
be alarmed. So as David indicated,
Dan, it's a little hard to hear you.
Better? Yeah. How about there? There?
Slightly.
That's better, but it's a little quieter than your usual self. Dan does not have COVID, but he is really sick as well. So
I'm gonna. Does this work a
That's
little
better.
Okay.
better.
All right, I'm gonna hold this even though I look a little lame doing it, but that's okay. So as David indicated, Chelsea Piers is the most significant tenant of Hudson River Park. It's the largest contiguous commercial property in the park. It's probably the largest commercial pier, certainly on the Hudson in New York City, maybe even outside of New York City. The head house, as David indicates, extends for 5 blocks from 17th to 22nd Street. There are 3 finger piers, and there are water areas which have marina uses and boat docking uses. I think most people on this call are familiar with Chelsea Piers. I won't detail the physical attributes. Also, as David indicated, Chelsea Piers is our largest revenue generator. In the fiscal year ending this coming March 31st, 22, We expect to receive approximately $8.5 million from Chelsea Piers for rent and a pilot, which is payment in lieu of real estate taxes. And this represents about a third of our self-generated revenue. So Chelsea Piers is very, very important to Hudson River Park. Chelsea Piers and the park operate currently pursuant to a 1994 lease, which has been amended, but you can tell by the date that this predates the park. Also, it was based on a form lease, which was used by New York State Department of Transportation, DOT, which was Chelsea Piers' original landlord back in 1990, the early 90s, up until when the park was formed in 1998, at which point the lease was assigned to Hudson River Park. The current lease term, meaning how long does the lease last, goes for another 22 years approximately to mid 2043. It does contain a provision which states that it was the intent of the parties to attempt to negotiate an extension of that lease just prior to the expiration of that term, of the current term in 2043. For reasons that David explained, Chelsea Piers wants to advance these negotiations in order to get the security of having a longer lease term earlier. And certainly from a business perspective, we understand and we agree with that assessment. You really can't wait until the last year of the term of your lease in order to know how long you're going to be there. Also, the trust has concluded that we too would like a new lease, in part because the provisions of the old 1994 lease need to be updated and rewritten. And also from the trust perspective, to the degree that Chelsea Piers will agree presently to provide new potential benefits to the park and the patrons, and the park patrons, to the extent that we can enter into a new lease earlier, obviously gives the public the benefit of those new features, 20 years earlier, 21 years earlier. So it made good sense to us to engage with Chelsea Piers on a new lease at this point. And I'm pleased to say that the discussions and negotiations have been proceeding apace, and we hope to conclude them, as David says. So let me describe what are to us three bucket of benefits, if you will, that would accrue to Hudson River Park and we think the public. And these three buckets of benefits, I'll say, also form the basis, if you will, of the new lease that we're negotiating. The first bucket is largely technical and has to do with commercial leasing. The existing 1994 lease, it lacks a lot of the essential clauses and landlord protections that the trust now considers standard, and that if you couldn't fall asleep at night and you wanted to read our Pier 57 lease, you'd find it in there. You would see it in the more recent Intrepid lease. You would see it in all the other leases really that the trust has entered into since 2000, and I think since 1998, or the initial lease that we did longer term, which was the Circle Line lease. So just to give you just some examples, there's what's called a casualty restoration clause, and this is a clause which deals with the obligations of a tenant to restore the property in the event that there's a casualty, i.e. a fire or some other damage or destruction to the premises. The 1994 lease is very, very weak in that regard, and really doesn't has numerous limitations on the obligations of the tenant to restore. Another example, and I'm just going to do a couple of these, would be that the insurance limits in the lease are lower than the insurance which the trust is able to secure from its other tenants, in the last 20 years or so. Infrastructure repair responsibilities are not precisely stated. And also, I'll just mention, because the lease predated the park, obviously, there's no mention of adherence to the park rules in the current lease. So there's a host of technical reasons why it's in the trust interest to have a new lease. And when we do the new lease, we would update and rewrite these various provisions. The second bucket, I'll say, is financial. While Chelsea Piers certainly pays substantial rent and makes a payment in lieu of real estate taxes equal to full taxes, there do exist opportunities to enhance the trust revenue. Some examples that we've been in discussion with Chelsea Piers are that there's something called percentage rent, where Chelsea Piers pays us a percentage of its gross revenue. So by adjusting, if you will, the percentages slightly and adjusting the thresholds upon which the rent would be paid, there's the potential for the trust to receive additional revenue. There are new categories of rent that we've been in discussion with Chelsea Piers about. I'll give you an example. If there was to be a capital transaction, such as a lease assignment, the trust might be able to participate in a certain percentage of these proceeds. So this would be a revenue source to the trust, which would not otherwise be budgeted or expected, but obviously would be a benefit to the extent that we could collect. And significantly, although Piers pays a substantial rent, there's always an opportunity from the trust perspective to ask Chelsea Piers for more rent. And we have been in discussions with Chelsea Piers of increasing their base rent. Chelsea Piers does pay a rent which is tied to the rate of inflation. So we've been able to basically keep up with inflation. But there are also opportunities to have additional stepped increases. And Chelsea Piers has been open to this, and we're near agreement, with regard to these type of rent increases that we might be able to implement in cooperation with Chelsea Piers. The third bucket, which is extremely important, deals with how Chelsea Piers is integrated within the park. As we discussed and mentioned, Chelsea Piers predates the park. They were there before us. So when the lease was entered into, and when Chelsea Piers was planned and constructed, there were patterns of park use which were not then known, and which could not have been reasonably anticipated in the planning of Chelsea Piers. So today, and this is no surprise to the people in the community board, the north-south circulation, for example, by park patrons through and around Chelsea Piers is, how should I say, not ideal. And the number of park users in the vicinity of Chelsea Piers has increased, and it's expected to grow substantially in the future. However, the configuration of Chelsea Piers and the extent and variety of current uses places constraints on potential physical modifications or changes to public, which might be able to improve public circulation. So therefore, working with Chelsea Piers, we've been seeking different ways to implement possible improvements to public circulation and wayfinding, so that the public be able to navigate that area of the park. And Chelsea Piers has graciously put forward a number of ideas to the trust that we've discussed to a degree with some of our board members. And it looks like there's maybe some very good results there, which we look forward to sharing with members of this committee. In addition to the physical improvements, as we know from prior discussions with CB4, there's a constant need for tenants in the park, private tenants in the park, to place resources to enhance traffic and pedestrian management. And we have also engaged with Chelsea Piers on enhancing, modifying slightly how they will deploy, I guess, what Chelsea Piers calls their guest services. I think Pier 54 calls them ambassadors. Pier 57 calls them traffic managers. Intrepid calls them, I forget what they call them. But at any rate, there is a need for, and something which was not anticipated when the park was anticipated, when these leases were first done, for our tenants to play a more active role in helping the public navigate in, around, and across various right-of-ways for safety and for public circulation. So that is, I think, a key item that we've been in discussion with Chelsea Piers on. So these and other changes to the Chelsea Piers lease, we anticipate incorporating in the new lease, and that this new lease will, of course, be provided in its totality to the community board and others, and be subject to public review and comment, hopefully shortly. We expect to provide these details prior to our next appearance before this committee. We expect there will then be a very full discussion once we provide the full lease, and we'll provide a guide or a glossary to that lease as well. But this overview provides really just a guide as to the type of elements the committee can expect to see when they get the lease, assuming our negotiations with Chelsea Piers continues to proceed in a satisfactory and productive way, which it has been thus far. So I'm going to stop there. And I guess now Maureen, David, and I have concluded our comments and would be happy to answer any questions.
Dan, can you just, I wrote down 3 buckets. Didn't you say there was 4? Did I miss the 4th one?
3 buckets. 3 buckets.
Great.
Oh, good. Then
Right.
I listened the whole time. Thank you. Okay. So as process standard, we're going to go to questions from the committee right now. I also just want to flag, I aired in the beginning of this meeting, we have a number of new members that have joined the Waterfront Parks and Environment Committee. And I apologize for not flagging that out earlier in the meeting. So we'll go to questions now. And if you are a new member, please say hello and do so. And we'll get to those introductions after we finish this item as well. I just want to keep the item moving. So questions from the committee, please use the raise hand function and we'll take it from there. Thank you, Alan. Alan.
No questions. I just wanted to thank Dan for all his really hard work and dedication to Hudson River Park Trust. And I wanted to thank Chelsea Piers really for doing a phenomenal job for the community. But Dan, it's been a pleasure working with you. It really has. Thank you. Thank you for your work here.
Thank you very much, Alan.
Thanks, Alan. Leslie?
I echo Alan on that. So I have a 9-year-old. I can't even tell you, I'm going to be at a birthday party at Chelsea Piers on Sunday. If I could count how many pieces of cake I had from Chelsea Piers birthday parties, it would be embarrassing. And I got to tell you, I love Chelsea Piers. It is everything you said. It is an unbelievable resource for our community. But saying that, and again, being a parent, it is extremely cost prohibitive to participate in some of these programs if you are of a certain income level. And I know you mentioned scholarships, and I also understand you're a private, you're a private enterprise here. You're there to make money, right? Like if my kid want to take a gymnastics class or a skating class, I mean, it's very, very expensive. And I know you guys have heard this before. So is there anything, I have 2 questions. One, is there anything we can do to help other people in the community to get sports into their lives, for kids to get sports, because really there's no other outlet for that, or at least an affordable outlet. And number 2, does Law and Order pay rent to you? Does NBC Universal pay you guys rent? How does that work? Or right to Hudson River Park Trust?
Leslie, this is David Tewksbury. I think I can answer only one question, very easy to answer. NBC Universal is a subtenant of Chelsea Piers and pays rent to Chelsea Piers. So and we're the master prime lessor of every square inch of the piers. We own and operate about, roughly 3/4 of the square footage, and then we have tenants in maybe 25% of the square footage, roughly. On the issue of accessibility for, let's call it youth, I mean, we've worked hard to deliver as much financial support and programming support to kids as we've been able to do over the past couple of decades. Although we had started a new initiative and we're continuing it, we started it pre-COVID during 2019. And it's basically, we're going to merge the 2 we're going to arrange a merger of the 2 scholarship funds, both of which 501c3s, and create a Chelsea Piers Foundation, which is then going to try to, just have a bigger footprint in terms of providing financial support and programming support and access support to the community, either, directly to individual kids or working with organizations like WINS or Hudson Guild to place kids in summer camp and field trips, et cetera. But as you know, every aspect, as you probably know, every aspect of running a business in New York is extraordinarily expensive. I mean, we're happy to be the biggest financial supporter of the park. That means we pay a big rent every month. You know, our utility bills are millions of dollars a year. Then labor and insurance, everything's pretty costly. So when it's not like we're running a .com, you know, internet type margins. It's one business, but at the end of the day, unfortunately, that means we have to charge what a sort of quote market rates. We do try to address that by having a very community-based philanthropic support mechanism in place that we're going to try to enhance, you know, pretty significantly over the next 5 to 10 years.
Can I just add, it's not quite your question, Leslie, but Chelsea Piers is one of the groups that helps us provide the free Healthy on Hudson fitness programs. In that case, this year it's for adults, but Chelsea Piers has been kind of a key partner of that program, and that program has grown this year. And, you know, I think that's the kind of thing that we've had a lot of success working with them on in the past and that I expect would continue.
Thank you for that. Roberta, please introduce yourself also.
Hi, my name is Roberta Barnett. I am a Chelsea resident and I'm a new member here on the committee. I wanted to ask kind of two questions. They're a little bit unrelated, but bear with me. The first question is relating to the green standards within your facilities. I know you're working with very old buildings, and I did a little Googling. It seems that Chelsea Piers purchases green power offsets for its energy use, and I think that's excellent. And I was curious if you are making any modifications to your buildings, your kind of built environment area, in order to improve energy efficiency or energy use overall, as opposed to simply offsetting your electricity. And then I have a second question. I don't know if I should hold it or if I should ask it up front.
Why don't you
We'll get
give
the
us
first one answered.
First one, Jeffrey?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, we've been involved in this clean energy credit program for probably close to, I don't know, 12 to 15 years. And it's where we pay a slight surcharge on all our electric, and it goes to fund, you know, green, well, I think it's principally wind power development throughout the country. Yes, we absolutely want to, need to, have to update some of the physical components of our buildings. We've started, you know, replacing inefficient 25-year-old air conditioning equipment that's on our roofs with more efficient 2020 versions of that product. We'll be replacing our roofs at some point in the not too distant future. And the new technology is not to put black rubber roofs on, but to put white rubber roofs on. We upgrade insulation and the exterior skin of the building whenever we do work to try to make it more energy efficient inside. We just spent this summer $2 million replacing one of the ice rinks, not quite 2 million, 1.6 million, replacing the West ice rink, which had not been replaced for 25 years. We took out the old ice and sand and insulation and did a much more energy efficient system. We had done the same thing with the overall compressor plant about 5 years ago, where we switched to a different type of a screw compressor system versus reciprocating, which is much more energy efficient. So we have, obviously, energy efficiency is good for the environment and it's good for lowering our electric and natural gas bills. So it's a win-win situation when we can accomplish things. But they are tough buildings to work with. Don't get me wrong.
Question 2, Roberta.
That's definitely good to hear. I was also curious, I'm not sure if you'll have the answer, if the park or Chelsea Piers is aware of any vehicle collisions, either with other vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists, or otherwise, that have happened around the facility. If you could either, if you have any knowledge, expand on that, if you've dealt with it in the past, how you've addressed it. That's sort of the question I'd like to ask.
The principal type of collision that we have on our premises are generally right off our premises, either before or as you're leaving, is bikes slam into the sides of cars. The cars get the green light and the bikes don't quite make the adjustment to the stop sign. So that's the principal type of collision that we have. We don't really have, occasionally we'll have a car or a truck will clip one of the metal railing barriers or hit our parking booths, the control booths. But that's not really, that's nobody's ever physically injured. The worst thing that has happened in relation to a vehicle in the last 20 years is somebody leaving an event, I can't recall the event, drove on the bikeway southbound, which can't happen anymore because there's physical barriers. And that happened late at night. So, but on site, everything's pretty slow. Things move slowly.
And I'll just say on the park side, we do endeavor to keep tabs on accidents. But a lot of times there's no one there to witness it. Both parties, if it's bikes or bike and ped, get up and go away. Sometimes if someone even calls 911, we don't necessarily find out about it. We try to work with the local precincts, et cetera, to get that information so that we have, as much as we can, a master perspective of what's happening across the property. But it's a work in progress.
I have a comment after Tina, and I'd like that to be the last word from the committee before we go to questions from the public. So Tina.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. Two questions. One is a follow-up to Leslie's in terms of affordability. What is the process whereby an individual's family can apply for financial aid?
I can give you a general answer. I don't know the precise specifics, but there are applications that are available at Skyrink and the Fieldhouse and through our summer camp, where a family fills it out, provides, indicates what they want their child to be enrolled in. There's a statement about being a good citizen and doing well in school, and they provide financial records, 2 years of tax returns. They're then reviewed by a scholarship committee, and subject to the availability of funds, awards are made to families and individual children. We also place some amounts of money through other organizations like the Fresh Air Fund, WINS. Erica may know a little better who specifically we've worked with recently, so that they do the screening, send us the kids, and we don't have to go through the individual application process. Those are the two basic methods that we work.
Right. I mean, my main concern is, speaking of a parent, my kid's now in college, but, for us, the classes would be unaffordable. And I'm just concerned that, some families are really good about finding resources for their children, which I think is fantastic, but others, don't really have the wherewithal to do that. And I just would encourage you to ensure that in serving the entire community, that individuals know that there's a process and that there is financial aid available. And if you could make a best effort to make that known to individuals that may be visiting the facility, I think that's really important in terms of serving the entire community. So enough said on that. Just in terms of the nitty gritty, and I couldn't hear very well, but the real estate tax break that you get, to what extent? What are the numbers there?
There's no real estate tax break. We pay the equivalent of full real estate taxes over to the trust. In essence, it's additional rent from our point of view. And I think it's additional income to the trust, but Dan can opine on that.
Tina, that's what a pilot is. It's a payment in lieu of taxes. And in this case, the trust is the recipient. In other cases in the city, it's a developing arm, right? We've been talking about pilots as it relates to Penn Station, and the money paid for those instead of taxes would go to the improvement of Penn Station. These are mechanisms that are set up in various places.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your answers.
Sure. Brad, short and sweet, please. I'd like to keep this moving.
Well, Jeffrey, at least they're not paying $1 a year. That's fantastic. So you guys you should put a ship out there and call it a museum also. So I got a couple code words there, Noreen, that I heard that makes me a little nervous, is transfer of the lease, which to me means Google Pier, which means more commercial space. And if Chelsea Piers wants to sell this on, what's in place to keep all these amenities? That's one question. That's just a concern. If they did pass on this business to somebody else, what do they have to maintain as far as a big portion that they do say is sports and recreational, which is the great part of what Chelsea Piers is. And then my second question is, it goes back to what they want to do and what we as an environmental board want. I think there's got to be some real strong language in this lease about renewable energy in-house, on the roof, in the water, windmills on top of the golf posts, a lot of things that can be done. And I agree, they maintain a beautiful facility. So I'd like to make sure that's in the lease language. Now, those are my two big concerns, Jeffrey. I kept it quick.
So let me just say.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, Noreen, he had a question first. So Dan, Noreen, go ahead.
Yeah. So in terms of the basic character of Chelsea Piers as a sports and recreational resource, the lease is going to, when it's agreed upon, but the lease will have a provision which assures that there'll be a strong usage for sports and recreation at Chelsea Piers, and that will continue regardless of who the owner of Chelsea Piers is. With regard to the second point, in terms of on-site renewable energy, it's something I think David can respond to, and we can, have some additional conversations.
I'll just add that I think, in terms of, Brad, your question, beyond what Dan said, I mean, we and Chelsea Piers agree that it is this Chelsea, the name is Chelsea Piers Sports and Entertainment Facility. So we want to keep that will be there, and there will be some enumeration that I think should satisfy people that isn't ambiguous. So, you'll see the words yourself. I will say that for some of the types of renewables that you mentioned there, Brad, we clearly agree with the goal, but it's also something that, given the regulatory climate, which I spend a lot of time doing, in water turbines and other things like that, are not yet straight to go approvals from Army Corps and Department of Environmental Conservation and other agencies like that, even windmills. I think it's a fast evolving sector. And I think that ultimately things like that will change. But right now, I think there are some real challenges there. And I guess I would just say that if it's not something that can automatically get approvals from other agencies beyond the trust, it's a kind of a difficult thing for us to automatically force as well. But David, I think you should comment from your perspective too.
If any, look, our goal is to pay less money to Con Ed or whoever is generating the electricity, because as I said, our electric bill is literally, $400,000 a month. It's absurd. So having a longer lease term will give us more flexibility to consider more significant capital investments in alternative energy solutions. So we would like nothing better than to be generating, 20 or 30% of our electricity. We haven't figured out how to do that yet, but with the new lease in place, we'll be in a position to at least start to get back into it. We have studied this in the past, from solar on the roof to the gas-fired turbines that you use. We've never been able to have it make reasonable economic sense, but maybe that will change with longer lease term and improving technologies.
Yeah, Noreen, I would just say if we're looking at a 50-year lease, and if we can't find renewable energy or get approvals in 50 years, then we're not doing our job. So I think it 100% needs to be in the lease. You guys know how to tier it based on approvals, stuff like that, but it has to be in the lease. And then one more thing, Jeffrey, and I don't mean to speak out of place here, but I've been on the board 10 years, and I do not recall one time Chelsea Piers coming to us and talking to us about what's going on there. And I would love to have more of that input from such a great facility. And I apologize if I did miss it, but I don't usually miss a meeting. So on that front, I think we need a little bit more input on the community board side. And I also would like for you guys to post your jobs on our community board website. I know that it's not there, and that would be wonderful. That's just a personal ask.
Brad, I was told that happened.
I think, Brad, they are one of our regular folks.
Did they get on there now? Because that's great to hear.
6 months ago, we started posting. 6
Right.
or 9 months ago.
And I just want to go back to one point that was made about the scholarships, and that's wonderful. But specific outreach to specific housing area, I think would be really important to say, hey guys, we had a table at one of the lower income housing facilities trying to recruit kids coming in, or mothers that need to exercise, or a family that wants to learn golf. Just something on a level that's more one-to-one would be greatly appreciated. Jeffrey, sorry, I'll step off.
Okay.
I know we got a busy agenda. Thank you guys. What a great facility. Oh, by the way, if you want to put drones on the roof, I'm all for it. Because that's
I thought
coming.
you were going to lead with that. I thought you were going to lead with that, Brad.
If you look at the pictures of New York, this was where everything came in. And we are on Piers, and I think it could be another big revenue stream where we're going to need a big sector of places to bring in drones with materials. So I'm just throwing it out there. So
Thank
I'm
you,
all
Brad.
for putting that in the lease, Noreen.
Yeah, and you got to expand the use provision.
That's a whole new section.
I'm not joking, Noreen. I'm being serious. We're the only city in the world that's not planning for this. And we are the hub of the tunnels on our side with the most polluted portion in the city. And we need to come up with some better ways. So this is a great spot. Also, just wondering, does Chelsea Piers want to buy the pier up the road where the parking lot is? Just a thought.
I will, Brad, talk to you about what you mean about drones at some length another time. Okay, just so I understand what you're talking about.
Thank you, Noreen. Thank you, Brad. Any members of the public, any questions? Okay, Noreen, is there an expectation of a letter from us yet or not yet? Is this
There
just
is not yet. We just wanted to
great.
keep you up to date.
We appreciate that. And just so you know, and for the appraisal of the committee, this meeting is off schedule because of the holidays at the beginning of the month. WPE will be meeting again next Thursday, getting back, I believe it's next Thursday, back into the sort of our regular cadence after this. So I'm not sure, maybe it'll be a November update that we'll look to hear from you for more information on this, but just let us know.
If it's next Thursday, we will not be back with you. If it's later in October, we might be back with you.
14th.
Yeah, I can confirm.
The 14th of October.
It's the 14th. So let us know. Yeah, sorry about that. It is the 14th, not the 7th. So if that works, if not, it's going to be November. Okay. Members of the committee, when we're not asked to write a letter, I don't suggest that we do waste the ink there. So given that there'll be a proper time for us to file that letter, I think we'll wait to do so. Thank you on this topic. Noreen, if you'll hang out for a little bit, we do take new business at the end, just out of respect to the rest of the agenda. Thank you for that. I do want to bring in our friends from the Parks Department. I believe we have a presentation or just an update on artwork to be installed for the Armory Show at Bella Abzug Park, which is Hudson Boulevard Park in Hudson Yards. Who is here for that?
That's me.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm actually presenting, so the Armory Show project has already been installed, but I can share some information about that. But there is another.
Appreciate a brief update, but that would be great.
Yeah, so there is a piece currently in Bella Abzug Park on Block 2 by an artist duo named Nai Olagunjo and David Cavaliero. You may have seen it. It's made out of shipping pallets and it has 2 mirrors on either end facing each other. And the artwork is about it's kind of interactive. You can look in the mirrors, but it's about questioning passive complicity in the dysfunctional ecosystem of global trade. Shipping pallets are pretty ubiquitous in commerce, and they're arranged in a grid to reference geographical coordinates and the place of the African continent within this economic structure. So that is on view for 3 months from September. It's been on view since early September to coincide with the Armory Show, which took place at the Javits Center. And then it'll be on view through the first week of December, and then it'll be de-installed. And I'll just give a very quick introduction to me and the Art in the Parks program, and then I'll move on to the 2 other projects we're sharing info on today. The Art in the Parks program presents projects or temporary public art projects in parks citywide. I think right now we have projects in all 5 boroughs, about 50 in total. Temporary public artworks are on view for up to 1 year. They can range, some are on view for the full year, some are much shorter, like the one I just mentioned in Bella Abzug Park. We work with community organizations, galleries, individual artists, community groups to program the public art. We review artworks for safety and to make sure they won't impinge on regular park usage. Exhibitors are required to maintain the artworks, provide general liability insurance, and they're also responsible for all costs associated with the project, including transport, fabrication, again, insurance, and providing a security deposit that we return once they restore the site. So that's our program in a nutshell. The project that you see on the screen right now is a project by an artist based in Montreal named Felix Marzel. The title is Big Apple. As you can see, it is a big apple and it's designed so that you can sit inside of it. This is made out of plywood. We're looking at install in mid-October. I think October 11th to the 13th, they'll be installing it. And then it'll be on view through September 2022. It's quite large at 9 feet, 6 inches high, 11 feet, 8 inches wide. But it is substantially heavy, which will keep it in place and will not require any bolting to the concrete there. So site restoration should be pretty easy. Next slide. So you can see there with a rendering with a human figure inside to give you a sense of the scale. Next slide. Or is that it? And just so you're all aware, it will be at the corner of Hudson Boulevard East and West 34th Street. So that's that project. And then we have another project I was going to share. Oh, and I should mention that project is commissioned by the Hudson Yards Hell's Kitchen Alliance, who we've been working with closely on their public art program. That's so this project that I'd sent didn't happen. So I don't know if you can scroll to the next page to show the artwork. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So this is about the piece that is with the Armory show. The location is not where you see here. It is on Block 2, which is between 34th and 35th Street. Next slide. But this shows the artwork as it was installed elsewhere. It looks just like that. Now, if you wanted to go by the park and check it out. And that is it for the Armory show. And then Janina had sent one more project. I don't know if you wanted to ask questions about either of the projects for Bella Abzug Park before we go into the project for Penn South Playground, because I have Charles Sands here from Hudson Guild, who are the partners in that exhibition.
Those seemed pretty straightforward. Does anybody have any questions on the Abzug Park installations? We love public art, so we appreciate these updates. We were, everybody, a lot of people were sad to see the gorilla go. So it's nice we're gonna have an apple in that park now.
If you find yourself in Chicago, I think the gorilla is actually at the Brookfield Zoo now.
Yeah, I heard she got purchased by the zoo, so there you go.
Yeah.
Brad?
Yes.
You're cutting in and out.
Of the public art. What is the percentage that there's local artists involved in your planning?
Yes.
Jeffrey, I was asking, does she happen to know, or she can get back to us? So what's the percentage on the actual use or the planning of local artists? He's from Montreal, and he sent us an apple, but it would have been nice for New York artists. Thank you.
Yeah, I can address that question. I don't have a number off the top of my head, but we do strongly encourage New York-based artists to submit their work for our program. The program kind of works on a first come, first served basis. We have an open application process that is open to all. Parks doesn't necessarily select which projects move forward, but we are always happy to work with local artists, local organizations. The other project that we're presenting tonight is with Hudson Guild, and that has a lot of local involvement. But if you are looking to see more local artists represented in the Art in the Parks program, we're definitely happy to take that into account. And it's also something I could share with the Hudson Yards Hell's Kitchen Alliance for their art program as well.
Great, thank you.
Yes, that would be great. Like, I'm a contractor, 20% MWBE people working on this job site. I think we should be able to do the same thing for the arts program. It promotes within, and it's successful. So that would be great if you could go back and look into that. Thank you.
Definitely.
Thanks, Brad. Thank you, Elizabeth.
So then I think there's one more project that I had sent over a quick summary on.
Can you resend it? I'm not getting it in my emails.
Okay. Or would it be possible for me to share my screen to show it?
I can't allow the screen sharing, but if you can you re-forward it to me?
Yeah, I'll send it over. In the meantime, while I'm sending over the visuals, would I be able to introduce Charles Sands from Hudson Guild to speak about the initiative? And then we can just show you, I just have some rough renderings. And
that is an excellent use of time. Let's go ahead and do that.
So I'll just give a brief introduction. This is going to be a series of 3 vinyl banners installed at Penn South Playground. It's part of a project that Hudson Guild was running with local youth with the High Line. It'll be installed in early November, and there will be an event, I think, November 6th. In conjunction with that, the banners will be on view for 3 months, but I'll turn it over to Charles to speak more about how the project came about.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So just good evening to the to Community Board 4. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Charles Sands, and I'm the Director of Youth Services with Hudson Guild. I think many of you are probably familiar with our Executive Director, Ken Dockers. My partners from the High Line could not be here tonight, but I certainly wanted to recognize them through this initiative. It's really been an amazing experience. So Jennifer and Mauricio from the High Line have just been amazing people to work with. The short end of it is that this project was the kind of culmination and birth out of a need, which I guess most projects probably are. But around the time of COVID, when it really first hit, there was a lot of the city was facing, I think at the time, an $8 billion deficit, and a lot of the spaces where they were looking to cut funding or to recoup some of that loss was through youth programming. So things like summer youth employment became a question mark. Also summer camps. So there was just kind of a lot of trying to figure out how do we continue to provide support and services to our youth at a very critical point. And these are youth that are already identified as vulnerable, and so to kind of leave them without support during a pandemic just didn't seem appropriate. And so this opportunity with the High Line came about by just putting our resources together and saying, what can we in-house provide and do for the local youth of Chelsea? And what we came up with was an opportunity to put youth at the forefront of active change. So during this early time in the pandemic, there was a lot of conversation around, what can we do? People were concerned about so many things, and rightfully so. But what are the things that we can control? What are the actions that we can take? And so the Chelsea Youth Placekeeping Project was born. We took a group of about 15 to 20 youth participants from the neighborhood, and we wanted to provide, opportunities for civic engagement, for leadership, and developing kind of those skills of how to become civically engaged in your community, and also through doing this, provide opportunities for employment. So participants attended workshops with our programs. All of this was done virtually, approximately 4 days a week. And through those projects and workshops, as they learned skills of advocacy, of budgeting, of presentation skills, group work, community canvassing, asset mapping, they also received stipends as part of their participation. And the initial goal, we did this in approximately 3 phases, but the initial goal of phase 1 was that participants would work in their groups to develop an actual project to kind of change the landscape of a specific area in their community. So the Penn South Playground became one of those sites. There was also other sites in the local neighborhoods. And at the end of this initial period, they presented their work to a panel of professionals. So that included Hudson Guild representatives from the High Line, and also representatives from NYCHA. And so our youth presented their projects and received feedback on their projects. They were also graded on their presentation for their organization skills, for the clarity of their message, their ability to answer questions, and really be able to kind of take that feedback. Phase 2 of that project was to then take these kind of 3 initial ideas that were presented, narrow them down into 1, and then really kind of come together to execute that project. We didn't just want this to be kind of a virtual experience. We really wanted this to be something that was actualized, right? This is critical in really helping to engage youth, not just to kind of say, hey, we want to keep you busy with these workshops, but that they can actually see a project that they created from the ground up, actually come to life. And so enter phase 3, where this idea of creating positive messaging and really promoting supportive mental health was the final project that was supported and expanded on. So this final project, as Elizabeth mentioned, will be posted at the Penn South Playground. It will be a 4-foot high and 80-foot wide banner. It would be 3 individual images. I'm not sure if those images able to show those images, but they were able to work with an artist that kind of took their raw drawings and was able to convert them into something, just a little more substantial. And so we're using these 3 images as kind of the positive messaging that our youth developed and felt like were important messages to have at a time like this.
Yeah, so the next slide shows a map of the site, just showing the 2 walls where the banners will be installed, so they won't block views into the park at all. And so they're on the fences that back up to the 2 buildings to kind of brighten up the park, have a positive message there. Next slide. These are some early, I guess, the sketches of the designs. There's 2 there, and then the 3rd is on the next slide. Charles, you might be muted.
Sorry. So so these were the messages around equality. One of the earlier images that you saw was also around providing information to suicide prevention hotlines. This was something, again, that was really critically important for them. And just asking the general question, if you saw one of the earlier sketches, it says, "Sisters, how are you doing? Brothers, how are you?" Right? So, are you feeling all right? And, for them, this was kind of their way of saying, if people would just ask us, or if we would just take the time to ask our neighbor, right? Not just assume that our neighbor is doing well. And so even just a simple question, right? Like extending a hand, extending a word of comfort can go a very long way in really helping to emphasize the importance and the strength in a connected community. And then you can see the slide at the bottom, with the rendering, it's kind of this mix of different generations. So that image represents, kind of both the youth and the experience. And then, over that, kind of having this rainbow of connectivity and community with these clouds of positive messaging. And it was really important for them to also think about, what if someone is reading this message and just kind of wants to know, hey, how can I get help with something that I may be dealing with? And so having some actual direction to a hotline that they could reach out to was also something important. They wanted these images and this banner to not just have an immediate impact on those who are viewing it and experiencing it, but also have practical application that you can use this information to actually contact and reach out to someone. So that impact extends beyond just the immediacy of experiencing the visual. And then the last, you saw the 2 hands, and with the message of unity and with the community of people, and just the symbols of equality. Was something that was also important for them to be able to express. So these are kind of the their sketches. Again, these are being taken with a professional artist who the participants themselves vetted and selected. That was part of their experience through this advocacy, right? Being able to identify additional resources and finding those who can help to kind of propel this message forward. These are going to be the 3 images. Again, kind of in the rough standing that will be used as placekeeping for the banner, which they will install on November 6th. The event itself will be open to the public, and we will certainly be sharing that information to the community board and to other local entities. What we're going to do is install it the morning of and kind of do a bit of a reveal later that afternoon. And really have the youth, not only who were involved in this project, but also the next group of youth who we are looking to incorporate into this. This is the first of what we expect to be many other placekeeping projects. We really want to see this expand and build, and again, create spaces for the youth of Chelsea to really be at the forefront of, helping to shape what their neighborhood can look like in ways that not just speak to them, but speak to those that get to experience it as well. So we really want to use this as a bit of a launching pad to future youth to say, hey, this is something that your peers were able to accomplish. How can we grow from this? What then becomes the next iteration of this that you can be a part of? And so we're really proud to have been able to kind of put this together under challenging circumstances, to say the least. And it was incredibly encouraging to see our young people be a part of something like this and take advantage of it. They really kind of dove in with both feet. And I would also, if I could share my screen, I would love to show you one of the presentations that they actually showed during the event. But they have really been impressive through this, and so we're excited about what the next steps would look like. And I'm happy to take any questions. Or
this is great. Thank you, Charles. This is so exciting. I think this is reflective in a sense of what Brad had also asked for, though obviously not professional artists yet, but certainly perhaps artists on the path to being professional artists themselves. So we have a number of hands up. I'm gonna, again, ask folks to keep their questions to a point so we can keep our meeting moving. Brad, Chris, and then Marty.
Sorry, I must have left my hand up.
Then
But
to
this
Mr.
is
LeBron we go.
absolutely amazing. And we will find many more spots for you. But thank you so much for your work. It's really great.
Thank you. It's great to hear.
Chris and then Marty.
Just applause, like really, just applause all around. Thank you so much for introducing us to the Elliott and Fulton houses. Would love for you guys to do that here in Clinton Hill's Kitchen when applicable. We know that COVID has highlighted youth suicide in Hell's Kitchen. We've had youth suicide earlier, late last year, and we've had multiple suicides in Hell's Kitchen actually. So please continue this, continue sharing that number. That number is so vital to making sure that our fellow Black and brown and Latino children and teenagers stay alive and thriving. Thank you, Jeffrey, for letting me speak.
Thank you for
Thanks,
that.
Chris. Marty and then Sally.
Thank you very much. I think of Penn South Park as a drab, blah place, which happens to be in my backyard. I live at Penn South. And I wanted to say more or less what the speakers before me said, but make it specific because it's my backyard, that it will be wonderful, exciting to see that park spruced up in the way that you started to think about sprucing up that park. I know that there are plans, that the committee has heard that there are plans to upgrade that park over the next number of years. I don't think it's anywhere near being funded. And if a few banners like the ones that you're proposing move that part of the project forward, that too would be really wonderful. I have a request that I'd love you to think about, Charles. You're describing your program to us in a way that this committee has not yet heard. And I'm wondering if a fourth item that you could find a place to mount in the park would be a description of the project and contact numbers for people who are looking at this wonderful presentation to be able to follow through. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a wonderful suggestion, and we certainly will. And I just wanted to echo something that you mentioned. Everything that you described about that park is exactly why they chose that park, because as residents of that community, they felt like that park was, it needed it. So they were right in line with you. Thank you for that suggestion.
It sure does need it.
Sally, you're up. And then Janine, if we can bring Elaine over from the public, we'll go to public questions next. Sally?
Okay, so that was part of my question, was how was the South Penn agreed upon to be the showcase for this, and going forward, how you'll select other locations. I am on the board of the Friends of Chelsea Green Park, which is over on 20th Street, and I love this project. I think it's terrific. I'd love to talk about future times, possible installations in our park as this goes forward. And I love the idea that Martin just made, to have information available at the installation so people know what it's all about. Thank you.
Sally, I'm
We
always
have some
happy to
canvases,
speak with
Mr. Sands, to get ready, it seems, and Elizabeth as well. So did we bring Elaine over?
Yes,
Hi,
we
Elaine.
do.
Hi, I'm actually not a member of public. I'm here to represent the Highline. I'm the Youth and Career Development Manager for the Highline Teams, and I just wanted to, no, it's fine. And I just wanted to echo what Charles said, is we are super enthusiastic, as this is like the first pilot of this placekeeping project, and collaborating with our Chelsea youth and getting Hudson Guild teams and our teen staff working together on these projects where they're super invested in and self-growing and self-seeding these beautiful moments and these beautiful inspirations for our community, I think is like a really exciting first step. So yeah, we're definitely just getting started. So yeah.
Great. Well, as you can tell, we are all, I think there's universal excitement around this project. So thank you to the Parks Department for presenting on all this night. Thank you to our friends at the Guild, and continuing to bring art to our parks, be they banal or already active. So thank you, everybody. I also, just committee, I didn't hear a need for a letter there. This just seemed like a straight update to me. Just keeping us in the loop from the Parks Department, what they're doing in the neighborhood and with our friends in the district as well. So unless folks feel otherwise, I didn't hear a need for a letter there, right?
No, we just present our projects as an informational presentation because they're temporary. We don't need a letter, but if you want to provide one, we're always happy to take one.
I think we like these, so there's no objection or reason for a letter. So thank you, Elizabeth and Charles, for being here tonight.
Thank you.
I want to dive right into the next item and quickly look for some feedback. Marty?
I just want to follow that letter comment up. I agree, there's no need for a letter here, but we don't want to give the impression to Parks and the presenters that should a situation arrive where you want our support on something, Jeffrey is delighted to write a letter.
No, that you're exactly
it could be
right.
me.
You are 100% correct. It just didn't seem like the need was there this round. Often our letters are supportive, just to be on the record also, just to clarify that. So diving into our next item, 'tis the season to talk budget. You received our previous fiscal year asks. Alongside that is an agency response, as well as comments from OMB, the Office of Management and Budget. The two key things I want to update you guys on tonight are some things that were funded that the agency didn't acknowledge because it came via our city council speaker, who also happens to be our council member, Corey Johnson. And then two, because we meet very soon again, our job as it relates to the budget is to come up with recommendations as a committee, thinking about waterfront parks and the environment, and then make a recommendation to the budget task force, who then compiles together all of the asks for budget needs for the next fiscal year from the various CB4 committees. This then creates our statement of district needs, which we submit to the Department of City Planning and to the mayor's office with letter, as well as to our elected officials. The budget committee actually had a meeting last night as our first to sort of sit around the table and begin understanding what our wins were as it relates to the fiscal year that we are currently in. And then as we begin our budget planning for the next fiscal year, the city's fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th. So there's a couple of flags here. We have a new administration. We will have new representation in the city council as well. We were successful on a number of fronts last year in our parks funding. To our new members, a lot of these items on our lists have been around for a while. One of the things that's really important to recognize is that things don't happen overnight in New York City, especially as it relates to transforming our parks, capital investment in green spaces. As Brad and many have pointed out, and Leslie, like environmental changes take time. And then thankfully, we have an excellent working relationship with the key partner on the waterfront, in our case, Hudson River Park. So I want to have a quick conversation on this tonight because I think based on our meeting timeline with tonight, sort of understanding what's been asked, I got a document from the Parks Department that I'm going to share with you guys after this meeting. That is the Parks Department, their asks for consideration of money. Some of it is reflective of the things that we've already asked. So what we'll need to figure out is whether or not we sort of rejigger that on our priorities list. So if you look in the Dropbox, there's two asks. There was capital asks and expense asks. Think of capital as things that last a long time. Cement, lamp posts, infrastructure of the park, things that require significant investment and have typically longer than a 5-year lifespan. Expense is cash spent each budget cycle. Salaries, programming dollars. That's kind of it for as it relates to parks. Recreational and fitness programming type stuff. So if you look at our lists, that's how to think about capital and that's how to think about expense. Our lists also are populated from things that we've already passed and recommended as a committee to happen, often derived from our letters. So if there's something new that we want to ask for that is not on the list or we haven't passed, technically we would need to pass a letter getting the board to endorse the ask. So laying out some framework for everybody. Alan is one of my colleagues on the budget committee. As former second vice chair, I chaired the budget task force for 2 years, and now I'm still on it. So Alan, any initial additional comments on the budget process? And then I'm going to go to Marty for any comments as well.
Not really. I think having new members here, I think we'll get some new ideas in terms of what they perceive as necessary for the various parks. And the rec centers are open now, so perhaps if any of the members do join the rec centers, there might be some things in there that might help their own communities, not knowing where everybody else is living. But I think we might get some new ideas coming in from what I've heard already on this committee.
Thanks for that, Alan. Marty.
Thank you. I in your recitation of expenses, you didn't mention personnel. I think that's an expense and not a capital.
I apologize. Yes, I said salaries, so that certainly is personnel.
And that's a fairly important one for us. So I just thought I'd highlight that.
Absolutely, it is. So just to, for those who are tracking, a key thing that the Parks Department says that was not funded, that actually was funded. It was funded by our council member, the Speaker of the City Council, is a major renovation of Chelsea Park. The field and running track received $1,028,000 for renovations, which is significant. This has been on our list for a long time. That track is in terrible condition. The turf as well is in bad condition. That is on the docket for money. The spreadsheet that is before you doesn't show that. It's because the agency didn't reflect it properly because it came later when the city council reconciled with the mayor's budget and what was finally passed. That was a big win for us in that way. I have to admit otherwise, not a whole bunch of wins on the parks circuit this past budget cycle. We may get some midterm successes because the city had a windfall between the federal disbursements and new state money that came in also via the feds. We're coming up on mid-year, so hopefully we'll get a boost there when it comes to parks, but not hugely successful when it comes to our capital expenses. There was a major win as it relates to kind of the waterfront. It's a parks transportation issue, was the relocation of Pier 76, the tow pound. Some see that as a parks issue, some see that as a transportation issue. The tow pound is no longer on Pier 76, and now it's a big 5.5 acre open space. So there will soon be a time when our committee is taking up discussions as it relates to what should come to Pier 76. That's a conversation we'll have with Hudson River Park Trust when they're ready and we're ready to have that conversation. So welcome some new ideas, but I do think I'd like to circulate this Parks Department budget spreadsheet to everybody to consider and digest and chew on, that we can take up in more detail, and we can hash out our priorities at our October meeting. I'm sort of teeing up process for everybody, getting you to think on park ideas that we've talked about over the past year. Obviously, new ideas are welcome as well, because what will happen is October, if we have new ideas, we would need to write a letter on it and have it passed at our November meeting, concurrent to that budget recommendation being passed as well. A lot of information, a lot of technicalities. I'm sorry to the new members for sort of throwing that up all over the place tonight. We sometimes learn by fire here, so appreciate and always welcome questions. Leslie?
Hey, can you guys hear me? I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yes.
Okay. I also think we mentioned parks, and being on the budget committee myself as well. I think we should hit them hard. It's okay. I think we should hit them hard on environment this time too. I think, I mean, there's so much.
I couldn't agree more, Leslie. You know, some of the responses were interesting when we had environmental asks on the last budget. One response from the agency and OMB, this is not a budget ask. One of the things we're running up against as it relates to environmental issues is how to approach them from a budgetary standpoint.
Right. Well, I was gonna add that right now, I'll give one example. They're giving electric charging stations out now like candy, and I just want to be on the map, you know, for the West Side, that we want this, this, and this. And, you know, I understand, and like Christine was saying in the budget meeting, you know, we should attach it to a specific ask with a specific number, which obviously we have to, but I think we should think about that, because a lot of these environmental things, I know Brad talks about this as well, I think it's super, super important that we just get on the map for it, that it's at the forefront of our mind. Because I don't think it has been as much, but like you said, it's very hard kind of to pinpoint, like you said. And maybe we should make more of an effort this year. I don't know if you agree or not.
I mean, I think it's, you know, the city passed 2 years ago, the significant green buildings piece of legislation. That is a very expensive but important undertaking. Are there modifications or recommendations we want to make to that program? I think that thinking about environmental approaches to either programs that already exist or programs that could be created might be a way to approach it from a budgetary standpoint. Right? We had the shore storm surge barriers on our list, and they came back with a you know, what did they come back with? It's not in front of me at the moment, but it's figuring out how to get them to actually find a way to fund something, I think is key here. Chris?
Thank you, Co-Chair. I'm echoing Leslie. When I had first seen that the Upper West Side received public charging stations about 5 months ago, I was excited, elated. I'd love to see that. But are our tree pits covered by parks?
So tree pits, we have an ask outstanding.
That was just yes or no. It falls into parks, right? The responsibility and things of that nature?
Generally, yes.
Okay, so would it be possible to include an ask for bioswales in there?
I think this is an excellent thing to dig in on. I think we should really think about this right now. Bioswales cost about $1 million a pit, which is outrageous. So how do we, I think this is an excellent item. But I think they're super expensive. How can we figure out ways to fold them into things separate from even our budget asks? It's when a new building comes online and says they're, you know, they have to put in XYZ trees, they must do bioswales. I think we started getting on. So again, I think this is a really good moment for us to think about like bioswales. We would need to pass a letter on that. We don't have anything on that, Chris. So think about between now and our next WPE meeting, what technical thing we can tie it to on a budget factor to pass a letter so it can work its way into our specific budget asks.
I would be curious to see what's being asked new and old from transportation. I know that Christine has had letters in the past asking for the extension of sidewalks for better access for ADA. So it may be, we may be able to fold that in to the ask there, pending on whether or not the co-chairs of transportation would be agreeing on that. And I know that in the transportation meeting that I sat on last week, bioswales were spoken about for the spiral or the spire over at Hudson Yards. So it's already a part of a conversation in Hudson Yards. It should be a conversation in Chelsea. It should be a conversation in Hell's Kitchen as well.
Yeah, I agree. So let's see. I mean, if you want to touch base with transportation to find out if they'll be formalizing in a letter, that makes it easier for us.
I would, yeah, absolutely.
Great.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Thanks. Roberta.
So I have, I guess, a couple of thoughts, and I don't know if these have been discussed previously, but I figured that I would share them nevertheless. The first is if we've discussed improving access to the Greenway and Hudson River Park from the street. I know that this has been discussed in relation to the High Line and in connecting that to the whole Penn Station area, but there are certainly points when I'm attempting to either get on or off the Greenway. It's entirely packed with people and everyone's trying to cross the street. It can be very chaotic. And then also in certain circumstances, you're kind of walking through what seems to be, I'm thinking on 30th Street, active construction site. It's been like that for years. And if there's a way to improve that experience, or maybe it's to work with a different committee to think about how to improve that experience, it may not be a parks question.
Sure. So, sorry, did you want a Greenway answer?
Yeah, sure, sorry.
As it relates to the Greenway, near and dear to many of our hearts on this committee, and in many, many ways, it is technically a state-funded piece of infrastructure. And tonight we're talking about the city budget. We have long advocated for increase in funding for the Greenway, which has a lot of mixings with Hudson River Park Trust. Last year, our board went on record asking for a lane of the West Side Highway to be taken to actually fully expand the Greenway. We are very much pushing on that. I don't see, because it's a state-funded entity, where a city ask would come into play on that. I'm not to say we shouldn't include it. If you see something specific, we can request.
I wasn't certain if Parks or the Department of Transportation was perhaps responsible for some of the connections.
Technically state DOT.
Yeah, between the streetscape and the park itself, and improving access at, there are probably a couple of different points we could all suggest. And that was just one point I wanted to raise, but thank you for that context. I appreciate it.
Sure. Did you have anything else?
Yes, two other things. The first, I don't know if we've made requests of Hudson River Park. I don't know if this is even a budget request, to look at their own operations and how to be greener. Eliminating the use of gas-powered leaf blowers is, I think, a popular ask, particularly in Manhattan. Not only are they annoying, they have a bunch of exhaust that they release, and that's bad for air quality. And then the street sweeper vehicles that go up and down the Greenway, if those are electric rather than run on gas, those types of park operations asks. I don't know if that would have to be privately funded, or if the Parks Department would want to kick money toward private entities to help facilitate that sort of transition.
I mean, I think we can ask the Parks Department to get rid of gas-powered leaf blowers and hedge trimmers and all that stuff. And I think we can ask the trust separately. Those are two separate entities that I think are totally within our jurisdiction to make that, to get on the record asking for those things.
And then one final one, I know this is like probably not the greatest thing to talk about, but I noticed there was a sanitation ask. I think that's super important. I think we've seen really a lacking sanitation capacity in terms of trash removal in parks all throughout the district for the past year. And hopefully the city will restore that budget, or parks will work with Sanitation, I'm not exactly sure the jurisdiction of this request, but to work on that, and then sort of related to that, perhaps rodent related issues, which I think probably go hand in hand with overflowing trash bins.
So, yeah, I'm sure we have letters on rodent abatement and all that kind of stuff. So I think these are very technical and appropriate things that we can think about incorporating.
And litter pickup. We've had that.
Yeah,
We've had that.
right,
I need it
because
again.
That is Parks Department, not Sanitation, because it's litter within the parks that we're concerned about, right? Yeah. Okay. Brad?
Roberta, I know it's coming up on Halloween, but you got a ghost right behind you. I just wanted to let you know that.
Does look like that, doesn't it?
Oh, that's a ghost. It's like staring at me.
Did you have a budget item, Mr. Pascarella?
I do. My budget item is very simple. It's why I joined the board a long time ago, and Corey told me never to bring it up. But now I think it's time. To me, it's an environmental issue with the dogs and the curbing of dogs, and especially in our neighborhoods, the brownstone neighborhoods. I think when someone registers their animal, they should have to take a mandatory course on proper curbing of dogs, something like that. And if there could be a specific item that we write in the budget to say, can we give some funding to this type of operation? You know, you get a license, you get a car, everything you do, you have to take some protocol classes. They could be online, but I think it might help. It could raise the standards of our neighborhoods. I've got kids, we stand on a stoop and the dog walks by and people don't care. And they go all over the stoops. It's disaster. And I just think maybe we got to help educate the public about what is really required and what we expect in our neighborhoods. Thank you.
So it sounds like an expense, like public education. I think it starts, your first ask of sounds like an expense ask for like parks education and publicity campaigns. And then there's a city in Israel, I believe.
No, go ahead.
That
Jeffrey,
is,
you got it.
There's a city in Israel, I believe, that is taking has DNA samples of dogs. And if you are caught not picking up after your dog, they test it and you are issued a fine.
That's like condos in Florida.
That's Tel Aviv.
That's exactly right.
It's there. But I like the idea of a public education campaign around this topic. It's the same thing we do when we remember the big diabetes campaigns and the get back on the train campaigns. Like, I think this is perfectly in line with keeping our neighborhoods clean. It's a don't litter and pick up after your dog campaign.
Jeffrey, we just did a bike helmet giveaway in 54 Park, and I think that what was available in resources there was incredible for new bike riders. We have a dog park at 54 Park. We have a dog park at Chelsea Waterside Park. We definitely need a third dog park in the community, but it should.
We do. We Pier 84 also, don't forget.
Yeah.
No, I think this is great. So I again, makes sense from a public outreach campaign. Sally.
So I just want to throw in, I'm probably older than most of you, but there was a Curb Your Dog campaign. For years, we had signs. And the signs disappeared. This has been a hot topic at the Council of Chelsea Block Associates. We've talked about it in our district because it's so horrible. I actually walked out yesterday and saw someone pick up her dog and put it over the tree guard to put it on the stop. You know, the tree guard's there to stop you.
They pick up their dogs and put them in elevated planters as well. I deal with that frequently.
But I started to talk. I talked to her about curbing her dog. She didn't know what I was talking about. She was young. But this is what we used to have. We used to have signs. Yes, it could be. I mean, it's a great suggestion. We should make it. I was trying to push it in Chelsea, but it really should be citywide. So I campaign to talk about what is curbing. People don't even know what it is or what it means.
They don't know what it means. I would also note that Harvey Harvey Milk won his election to San Francisco City Council by running on a campaign of pick up after your dog. So this is a very much a relevant topic to cities around the country, and I think we are totally in line to have this in our ask around community cleanliness. It's anti-litter, and it is about, you know, personal responsibility for your dogs in our shared streets. So I think this sounds great, and it's a new type of ask for money also.
I
Jeffrey,
think.
my point is,
Oh, I was just going to
they don't have to spend a lot of money.
That's true, Brad.
Sorry. I mean, it's a pilot program. Sorry.
I was just going to interject and follow up on what Jeffrey had mentioned. I think Milk's campaign was Scoop the Poop. It was a very successful campaign.
Thank you, Tina.
Little history.
Tina, I might have found my platform. Maybe I got a shot now. Because that's my type of slogan.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think a lot of people don't know what curb their dog means. Marty.
Jeffrey, I'm changing the subject a little bit with the mind of moving the agenda since we're almost finished, right?
Yes, because we're going to take this up in more in depth in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. In the beginning of this meeting, you said that you had forgotten, or in one of your early statements, you said you had forgotten to ask new members to say 1 minute about themselves. And I think that would be, before we go home, a very good.
Oh, we have new business, and don't forget a couple of new business items.
Well, I don't care where you do it.
But it's a totally appropriate time to do it, Marty. Let's give a round to the newbies. Roberta, you said hello already, so we'll come back to you to find out a little bit more. Hand up, Jennifer, thank you. For those in the first meeting, if they could put their hand up, and we'll go from there.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Cook. I moved to Chelsea this past year from Park Slope, and I'm excited to get involved in the neighborhood. I have a work history in real estate and renewable energy, and so the environment subcommittee seemed like a good place.
Welcome, Jennifer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it Myrnal? Did I say that correctly?
You did. Hi, everyone. It's Myrnal. I am a proud Chelsea resident. I used to be in Hell's Kitchen I was in Hell's Kitchen for about 6 years. And then in 2014, I moved to Chelsea, and I love it. There are parts of it that I hate. Bits about it that I hate, but you know, that's why I'm on the the community board.
Thanks, Myrnal. Candace.
Hi, I'm Candace. I'm in, I don't know what area really. I'm on 30th and between 8th and 9th, so in that weird area. But I've always been on the west side between Chelsea, Hell's Kitchen, in that area. I'm a union carpenter, and yeah, I guess that's it. I've been involved in my community a couple of times, in the community board a couple of times, asked for a trash can on a certain part on 36th Street, things like that. But yeah, I'm glad to be here. I do have a couple of questions on certain little acronyms here that I had highlighted that I can ask later, but I've kind of Googled. I'm like, I think that's the word for that. So yeah.
Yeah, you should always. I, in particular, when I chair these meetings, I talk quickly in the assumption that everybody understands all the government acronyms and vernacular that we speak in. So never hesitate to ask for clarification.
And you can ask.
I do know how to use Google, so.
You who live in Chelsea Kitchen, you're welcome to ask for clarification anytime. So just email us or call us.
Yes.
What is my area called? I mean,
Chelsea Kitchen, I just made that up.
Okay, I mean, I was calling it healthy when I lived on 36 before Hudson Yards. I was like, I want to be healthy, and like we made little stickers and would stick them around just to fuck with people. But it didn't go apparently, so.
Gotcha. Well, we're super happy to have you. Thank you for being here. And Alice.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I apologize that I was late to the meeting. I was a little confused as to whether or not the meeting was actually happening today, so I'm sorry about that. I live in the Chelsea area. I chose this particular committee because this this is my most thought about subject matter when I was applying for the board. And so I'm super excited to be on here and to be a contributing member.
Great. Thank you, Alice. And Roberta, I know you sort of said hello, but if you want to share any more information, you're welcome to as well as a new member.
Not much to say. I just happen to love parks. The Hudson is my happy place. It has been for most of my life. Really excited to be here.
Great. Thank you so much. It's really great to have everybody. And just sort of on process or ideas, if there's ever ideas or questions that you do have, certainly reach out to Janine or Marty and I, and we are always happy to get you answers, look for answers, and see what we can do or bring items on the agenda, all that kind of stuff. So please don't hesitate to reach out to Janine, Marty, or me for any needs that you may have. So with that, I'm going to go back to Noreen. Oh, to wrap up the budget discussion. The key takeaways I have from this, besides all of our outstanding asks that have not been funded, I'm also going to be sharing with you that Parks Department spreadsheet that has their specific asks on what the agency thinks is worthy of funding and consideration on our part. Gas-powered leaf blowers and hedge trimmers to replace those with electric equipment. I think that's a specific budget ask. That's equipment, that's expense. I think that's great. Curbing of dogs publicity campaign. And then generally litter in parks as well. Seemingly more sanitation Parks Department funding for that. If folks have,
electric charging stations, because we can couple that with DOT. With the,
Leslie, I wonder though if that should be a transportation committee thing, because right, I think I don't want to not do it by any means, but I think it's an easy flag for transportation. I'm on that committee, so I'm happy to bring it up there.
I would love to hit them twice, and I think
what I don't want happening is there to be electric vehicle charging stations in and only around parks, because I'll start laying down to block that from happening. I just don't want, I don't want there to be, it worries me, like our budget asks typically go to parks. So electric charging stations, that should come out of transportation because that's a DOT initiative right now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let Christine and Dale know, our transportation committee chairs, this was a discussion at WPE as it relates to the E of our name. Transportation should include that on their budget list. Is that okay?
I just quite, so where does the word environment come in? I mean, this is also what charging stations are about. They're about the environment. So, I mean, I don't care where it goes, but I think they're important. And it's not just waterfront, it's environment. That's the big word. So is it transportation or is it environment?
Yeah, I agree with that. And what we need to do is be strategic in the way we ask for electric charging stations, whether it's transportation or parks or both. It needs to be done in a way that would be effective.
And Jeffrey, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a transportation issue predominantly. Just knowing the transportation committee, I think, and you're on that committee, right? You're on. I mean, there's so many.
I'm literally happy to drive that to make sure that we are asking for it.
No pun intended.
Right.
But I think there's going to be so many other asks. You know what I mean? I think transportation has a list of asks, right? Like a ton of them. And so I think that would be kind of push down. I'm not foreseeing that, but I kind of had that sense. And if we could use our environmental pull, like the others said, maybe it would help.
I think that works.
And then we have shore power. I mean, there's a list of stuff that we need to talk about.
Shore power actually could be a budget ask. Frankly, we passed a letter on that. This is excellent. We passed a letter on that. That is EDC is responsible for that. That's absolutely a budget ask. Let's put that on our budget list. We have a letter about it too. Perfect. Shore power.
Do we ever reach Long Island? Can we tell them to put them all on Long Island?
Yeah, they're not going to end up in Long Island or New Jersey. They are absolutely going to keep docking in Manhattan. Okay, so we have electric charging stations and shore power at the Manhattan cruise ship terminal also on our list. Anything else that I missed for this meeting?
Can I ask a question, just procedural? When you are formulating these requests for the committee, are the committee asks agency specific? So for example, Parks deals with Parks and DEP, or can requests that come out of different committees go cross agency? So maybe
They certainly can. Our board finds a lot of success by being very strategic in who and how we deal with things. So I think it given the call for it and really driving into the E in our acronym, it's very relevant here. And also hopefully we can shoehorn it into some transportation asks as it relates to electric charging stations. Arguably, since cruise ships or transportation, we could ask for shore power there as well. But yeah, we try to be very strategic as it relates to that, but that's not to say we don't have overlap in agencies. Brad, and then Candace, and then I'd like to go to new business.
Hey, Jeffrey, sorry.
Yep.
My question is, when we talk charging stations, they're putting them on next to the sidewalk in public parking areas?
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's correct.
And
Well,
also
here's-
designated
here's-
areas, not, no, it also,
here's-
there's also, Brad, there's like a gas station. They also are choosing like designated area, like parking lot area, not lot, but like charging station areas. Like in Europe, you go and it's a designated area. It's not like off the curb. I mean, they could do it off the curb. That's what they're doing, some of them, but
They have
there's
that, the
also-
off the curb is in the Bronx.
Yeah, exactly. They put it, the city put it in the Bronx.
I mean, my worry is we have congestion pricing coming in. And once that hits, there is no incentive to stop cars in our city, right? And this is just adding to that. And that's my worry. Like, what is the study saying congestion pricing is going to reduce traffic? I mean, they're never going to take it away. That's just, a statement I'd like to make. But I know it's not a topic everybody likes, but electric bikes are real and they're not going away. And are they going to put in bike racks that have power? And because I'm more for that than a car. And I'd rather push for bike stations instead of these electric, you know what I mean? Delineate the difference. Maybe we want to be a pilot program on the west side that has more bike racks because we're trying to reduce the cars. Because the commuter's going to use that car. And the commuter's going to fight for that spot. Not just a Hell's Kitchen resident or a Chelsea resident. So I think there's got to be more discussion on this.
Well, I think, is it appropriate to ask for both right now?
Yeah.
I think the bike dock idea is excellent.
When we're trying to delineate between, did I mute myself? Delineate between having power stations for cars, we should be the west side going, we want power stations for bikes. Because since I've been on this board, we're fighting to reduce. We're reducing parking. We want to take avenues away from cars. We want to have the boroughs and we want the commuters, but to park in New Jersey, to park in Long Island and get in here different ways and move around the city in a different way. It just, I leave up the nuance to you. That's why you're the chair.
No, I mean, I'm in universal agreement with you on this, but I think that we would probably find significant push for electric charging stations and this bike idea. And I think given the city's interest right now, the number of announcements that have come out about it, they're not going to let up on the electric charging station stuff. Let's make sure we're getting our fair share, and let's also add the bike ask to it. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. And we can I mean, I'm happy to bring this up at transportation too, because I think it would be a good way to parse it out, right? We can make the broad ask, and transportation could even dig in on how do we reach out to garages, right? We should be leading the way on private garages that have the charging stations. Do they already have them? All that kind of stuff. So I think it's an and here right now.
Many private garages have them, especially amongst the Marriott Group and Star Resorts. They usually have 2 to 3 to 4 Teslas and 1 Universal dock in New York, and they're beginning to expand that out through New England and the Eastern Seaboard. So this is an initiative that's happening privately and can happen also publicly, Jeffrey.
Yep.
And Jeffrey,
I see
thing,
lots
in
of hands
Brooklyn,
going
it was-
up, and I just want to be cautious. I want to keep the ball rolling here. New budget items. Are we going back here, Candace? Where are we at?
You had just asked what else we'd missed, and I wrote down tree pits, the bioswales.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to.
Perfect. Roberta?
Just wanted to add a little bit of color to Brad's ask. I think when you're talking about e-bikes, what you might want to specifically ask for or coordinate with transport on is how to make sure that battery charging or e-bike battery charging is secure, and can it be connected to vehicle charging. And the reason why it's important is because oftentimes it can take hours for these batteries to charge. They're fairly heavy. They're in great use by many people, but particularly the people who deliver our food and other various delivery items here in the district. And having secure bike battery charging could actually be very valuable to that population.
Thank you for that. Okay, Marty?
I'm going to throw another whole thing into this list of stuff. Earlier, you were talking about things that should happen when new buildings are put up. Bioswales was mentioned. I think this committee needs to start to talk about the separation of storm sewers from sewage pipes. And so when a new building goes up, that's a perfect time to do that section of separation. And that's
Separate the CSO.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a very long-term project, but if we don't start talking, and it's a very expensive project. But as the most recent storm showed us, the combined storm sewers cause a lot of shit to happen on the streets.
Literally.
Yes.
I think that's an excellent ad, Marty, and like you point out, for the long term. I quickly want to ask Noreen if she'd like to provide her update tonight. She also has to catch a train, and I'm trying to be cognizant of that. Noreen, do you want to give us?
She doesn't really need the train. She can wait.
You need to run.
No. But it's important to me that I do this. So Janine, are you able to pull up this slide for Chelsea Waterside?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Great. So we've been here before, including a few months ago when I think we gave a pretty detailed presentation on the kind of phasing considerations that are part of our redoing what we call phase 2 of Chelsea Waterside Park. Just as a refresher, so we're Hudson River Park Trust. We're basically 4 miles of the river from just north of Chambers Street up to 59th Street. And we have 2 inland parks that are part of our jurisdiction. 14th Street Park in Community Board 2 and Chelsea Waterside Park in your neck of the woods between 22nd and 24th Streets. About 2 years ago, we redid with money largely from Corey Johnson, but also from a fundraising campaign from Friends of Hudson River Park. The playground and the basketball court are also new. So when you're looking at this diagram, bottom right is the playground, and the bright blue patch is the basketball court. Those will not be touched as part of Chelsea Waterside Park Phase 2. Everything else on this, including areas outside of the thick black lines that you see here, will be touched as part of Chelsea Waterside Park Phase 2. Last month, or July, at our Board of Directors meeting, we approved, off the top of my head, it's about $13 million total of construction for redoing all of these, the rest of this park area. And we've already done previously presentations to the community of what the design is in more detail. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that there would be so many new members tonight. I'm sorry I didn't bring all of that, but we'll be putting that up on our website again, and we're going to be putting some signage on the park, kind of explaining what's happening. But briefly to orient you, bottom triangle is the existing, there's an existing dog run. We are enlarging the existing dog run and creating a small dog run as well as the larger dog run, or small dogs and larger dogs in that zone. The sports field will be redone, and we are expanding kind of the boundaries of it. The actual formal playing area won't change, but the buffer areas will be extended also with the artificial turf, so that people can kind of have a warm up beforehand, or little kids that are part of the Big Sisters team can play on the sidelines or whatever it is, and it should be a nicer space. There is a new first time ever bathroom that is going to be part of the design. And then that whole middle area that is saying main field overlook and comfort station, that is a permanent picnic area that the community advocated for, and it generally a much greener, more gardened space, as opposed to what some in our office kind of call kind of a pass through to the western side of Hudson River Park. So the last time we were here, told you that we were working with our construction manager to try to figure out a pretty complicated phasing plan, because unlike, for example, Pier 97 or the Gansevoort sections of the park that we're building right now, obviously Chelsea Waterside Park is already heavily in use, and our goal is to try to manage this as much as we can to keep as much of it open at a time as possible. So we have finished, for the most part, the kind of primary discussions related to staging. And starting next week, don't worry, no closures, but we're going to start seeing construction fence going up. So the construction fence is going to be to kind of create the middle main field overlook comfort station area that you see there. And we will be closing, not quite initially next week, but we will be preparing to close the ingress to the park at the end of 23rd Street there. And we will be creating new entrances to the playground so that people can, or a new entrance to the playground from 24th Street so that people will be able to keep using the playground. There is already an entrance to the dog run on the south side at kind of the point of the triangle. There is already one entrance to the sports field, but we are going to add another entrance to the sports field as well, also from 24th Street. So basically, as described the last time, the 23rd Street kind of through pass will close, but there are crosswalks that you can see kind of, it's faint, but there's a crosswalk at 22nd Street, and then there's a crosswalk at 24th Street. This happens to be an unusual area where there were 3 crosswalks in 3 blocks. So you're going to lose one during the duration of the construction, the 23rd Street one, but you'll get the ones at 22nd and 24th Streets, or they'll stay open. So round about middle of October, I would guess, that is when the whole middle of this area would close. We are looking to start the dog run in the wintertime, because usually the dog runs are a little bit less busy then, and we will be trying to do it as quickly as we can. And we don't have all the details on exactly the timing of this yet, and we can return once we do, or if there's a smaller group that wants to kind of hear some of these questions a bit more and engage with us on this, that's fine. But some pain, unfortunately, in doing this is going to be inevitable. And then normally our fields, it's counterintuitive a bit, but the summer season is usually a bit less insane for the sports fields than the spring and fall seasons. So our current thought is to kind of close the sports field for the summertime And by then the dog run hopefully would be open. And then the middle area, because of the bathroom construction, is what will take the most time to do, because that actually is a fairly complicated project. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'm sure there are some questions.
But Noreen, to clarify, we're getting a bathroom. We're getting a comfort station at Chelsea Waterside Park, right?
You're getting a comfort station. You know, this will be, I think, a significantly improved space for the community. But it comes with some, closures that are necessary.
For the time being, correct. Yeah. Any questions for Noreen on that?
Alan, I would have been disappointed if you didn't have a question.
I just wanted to make sure everybody heard that we're getting bathrooms at Chelsea Waterside Park. This is huge.
I think this is a 20-year ask for your
Correct.
statement of district needs.
Thank you, Bob Trendline.
Yeah, that for sure.
Two questions, actually. One for this section and then one for the main park. When do you think you're going public with this, getting the news out to folks about the timeframe?
Actually, Alan, we put signs up this past Friday saying that starting the week of October 4th, there's going to be some construction. So we deployed signs at the dog run, I think at the playground. The playground is not going to close, but there may be, just while we're putting the new gate in, there may be a teeny section of it that has to be closed just to make sure that that's done safely, obviously. But we did already put some signs out.
Speaking of comfort stations, the most popular question I get when I'm in the park is, where's the bathroom? Usually I'm over at Piers 66. Is there any chance of doing something with the empty space that's north of the heliport with maybe a trailer type comfort station? Something similar that I think they used to have, with maybe they still have over Brooklyn Bridge Park.
We frankly probably have safety and security issues with that. But we are trying to do the 29th to 44th Street, issue the request for proposals for that area later this year. So we're trying to start on the very complicated, no doubt we'll be talking to you about this a lot, complicated from a land use perspective, but we will be looking at that area and long-term future. But we have temporary bathrooms. We're not able to staff them. And we know from experience that we would have public safety issues trying to do something like that.
Okay, understood. All right, thank you, Noreen. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you, Noreen.
So if anybody has more detailed questions, or we can provide something, at Chelsea Waterside Park Association, I know, Ellen, you kind of wear both hats, but as we know more about what will close when, we'll let people know, but happy to answer questions in the meantime. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night. Good to see you.
You too. Okay, so final bit of new business. A couple of folks had messaged me about it. It was covered in local papers. There's been multiple cruise ships. I can see them. I can see the terminal from my apartment. I live on 11th Avenue. I was enjoying seeing more of the river, and now we're back to seeing billowing smokestacks. So I think I'm really glad the budget conversation, we have a formal ask to EDC on the budget for this, which is great. It's 10 of 9. This discussion could take us down a rabbit hole. So I want to be cautious and cognizant as we open this up. The board did issue a letter on this topic about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, maybe. And I, again, meant to circulate that, and it did not happen. So, we're on the record asking for it. When we talked to EDC last, it's a significant cost undertaking. EDC is responsible for a whole bunch of things, including jobs and economic development, and they are hesitant to do anything in their mind, that would make people go elsewhere. And the major rejection is that cruise ships would go to New Jersey instead of Manhattan, which I always find those things hard to believe when people say they're going to go to Texas. No, they're not. They're still going to dock in Manhattan. So I think a budget ask is really, really smart. I'm not sure there's an additional letter to tie it to at this time, but Chris.
Thank you, Co-Chair. So yes, I believe the meeting on shore power was April or May of 2020, where EDC had presented to us, and then they were supposed to come back to us, but they've yet to do so for whatever reasons. But I was doing a quick breakdown of New York State's power.
Chris, your microphone has been really.
I know I have a new computer, so I'm going to speak up. Hopefully you can catch on. But if we can add on a new letter what the breakdown of New York State's current power is to emphasize the need for shore power on the Hudson, I think that would be a great addendum, because currently New York State's power mix is 51.16% gas, 37.5% nuclear, and only 7.4% hydroelectric. And Governor Hochul just signed a preliminary deal with Hydro-Quebec to bring in about 14 kilowatts, or I don't know, it's in the T's. I gotta find the number again. 10.4 terawatts an hour over a year span in New York State for the next 20 years. If we can add some of those points to say, hey, we're going into renewables already, it's a state commitment, and this is only going to work lockstep with what the state has already committed in terms of improving renewable energy. It can be a highlight to emphasize.
So is this a specific shore power item?
So it would fall. So this would fall into shore power. Saying shore power falls into the energy portfolio that we're already trying to build in renewables.
Well, but shore power would actually draw more power from the grid, right? Like the part of the
It
problem
would, but
is we would need to expand capacity on the grid for this.
Because we're doing gas and coal right now, we can say, okay, we're building out the infrastructure for renewables, and if we do that in lockstep with that infrastructure development, then then shore power would not be pulling from Con Ed's coal plants or the gas plants or the gas pipeline plants that are being promoted or pushed upon in Queens and Brooklyn, et cetera. So this is a collective opportunity to think green, not just about the immediate air in Hell's Kitchen, but about New York State's renewable portfolio agenda.
Any other comments on that?
Yes.
Brad?
Well, I mean, we're talking around the issues, right? It's always about money and how they're going to get the money to do it. And since Martin and I have been on the board, we've asked repeatedly, why doesn't the passengers get a certain tax when they hit port? I mean, it's ridiculous to me. I fly to England to my family. I land in an airport, I got to give them $30 because they're redoing the parking lot. They don't care. And I don't know why we're making such a big deal about it. And I think that is the point. If we say, here's the money from the cruise ship, put the power in. I mean, I think it's a two-part, environmental solution and a money solution coming out of the guests that are coming here. When people are checking in a hotel, there's a hotel tax, right? There's all these other taxes. So I just think we have to get help with Brad Holyman's office saying, please. That's all. That's my point on that one. Thank you.
Here. Marty?
I completely agree with what I just heard. I believe that some of those points were in the previous letter that we wrote, and I don't think that we now need at this moment to write another letter. The conversation of shore power comes up in 2 weeks when we talk about the budget and where we place shore power on that list of crap that we're going to be talking about. I'm sorry, it's not crap. That list of stuff that we're going to be talking about. And again, to be strategic, we do need to write another letter about shore power, but we need to figure out when the best time to do it is and what the content of that letter would be. And I don't think we can do that tonight.
Thanks, Marty. Any other comments? Questions? Chris, do you want to spend the next 2 weeks thinking, I mean, you're going to do a lot in the next 2 weeks, I know, but the idea of what might be useful in terms of like how we flesh something out of this, and we may be able to bring it up at our next committee meeting in 2 weeks, or do we just sort of attack it from this budgetary standpoint at this point in time? We've never made this ask before. And then to Brad's point and Marty's point, how do we begin to leverage a tax on cruise ship passengers specifically for greening the piers, greening their industry?
I think we would go from a budgetary position and talking about tax for an immediate need.
So,
I mean, there's a lot going on over the next 2 weeks with bioswales and the transportation committee. And I think I wouldn't be able to do that on my own.
Leslie?
I don't think we should get into a letter on who we're going to tax and why we're going to tax them. I think we should just be encouraging our elected officials to figure that out. And this is a priority for us. However they get the money, that's fine. Where they, but we shouldn't be, I don't think that we should be writing letters saying tax people coming off. I think actually cruise ships, myself, if I had an opinion, I think cruise ships should be paying for their own way to change to shore power. They're already outfitted for shore power. They plug in Canada, they plug in on the West Coast, they plug in Scandinavia. I mean, they should be paying, I don't know if we should be saying as a local community board, tax people coming off. I don't care who you tax. I don't care where the money comes from. They should be figuring it out. And it should be, we just have to make it, I think, Jeffrey, known that it's a priority for us. That's what I think.
Mean, what I would like to do is when the time comes, we put the item on our agenda. We have a discussion with EDC. Again, we find out we get a hold of the lease that EDC has with whomever, see what that looks like. And then I think we'd be able to more formally opine. In the meantime, it's new. We've never had this on our budget ask before. I think it's a really smart environmental approach to hit EDC with, given their desire for inaction on this topic.
I agree with you 100%.
Any other? It's 8:59. I think we're done. I'll take a motion to adjourn, please.
Good night, Jeffrey.
Thank you, everybody. Good night. Look out for that sheet from the Parks Department coming your way, and plan for more budget discussions in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Welcome to the
everybody.
new members. Welcome.
Yep.
Yes, Candace, Jennifer, who else? Where else? Welcome. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Good night.